Good evening. My name is Joe Bandel, and I am the last Rosicrucian. Tonight we're going to discuss Oak Advantage number 10, the highest cause, the conscious individual. Now, the United States is based on individual rights. At least that's my understanding of it. It says that each person is granted God-given rights that cannot be taken away. Okay? And part of what this subject tonight is talking about the idea of individual rights as opposed to taking those rights away from people or something like that. And so, and I thought about this, and there's not really a easy way to get through this other than kind of to throw some things out there and say, what do you think about it? How do you? Because we, in our society today, we are facing a choice of whether we believe in the good within humanity or whether we believe the bad that's in humanity. We're being forced to choose. We're being forced to take a stand. And what we're going to go get into tonight is going to deal with what's your choice going to be? Now, what's interesting is how radical so many people become about individualism. I mean, I've got a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I know that mental and emotional health requires a strong self-esteem and a strong ego. But just about everywhere I look, they're trying to take that away from us. They're trying to say, don't you be thinking for yourself. Be compliant with everybody else. And there's another factor that I come into with this, which basically reminds me of the Star Trek, the New Frontier, the Next Generation, I guess it was, which had the Borg, which was a collective and a hive mind. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I come down on the side that humanity evolves. And what happens is it evolves in cycles. And like the book, The Fourth Turning, it describes those cycles of like 4 generations. And what happens is the strong individuals or the ones that move into new territory, they go first, and then they have to stop. They're stopped. They're held back. They have to stop for a while the rest, the slow people, or the rest of us catch up to them. And that just happens in just a regular cycle. So it's natural. And during part of the cycle, individualism is appropriate, and during part of the cycle, the collective part has to catch up. But you can say that you talk about a group soul, like humanity has a group soul. And I can tell you that as a mystic, as a Rosicrucian, and as somebody who has crossed the great abyss, I have merged with Source, with unity, and achieved a connection where, an understanding where I realize that I'm part of everything out there. I'm connected to everything at some level, and that you can't deny that. And I'm also convinced that you cannot hurt somebody else without hurting yourself, because we are all part of each other in the long run. And we're part of Gaia, and we're part of all living things. We're part of the picture. But the thing is, there is illness, and there's toxicity. And sometimes you have to get rid of that poison. You've got to get rid of that toxicity. I'll give an example in which, and I'm not proud of this, okay, but in my life, I had to get dentures because I didn't take care of my teeth properly. And what happened was I was ending up with a constant low-grade infection just because of having bad teeth. So there was a poison inside me, and I had to get those teeth pulled, and I felt better because of it. So it hurt me. But I think that there's a lesson in this, because just like those teeth or whatever, there's bad people out there. And even though they're a part of me, sometimes I got to do without them. Sometimes we have to do without them, even if it hurts us. So we have to not tolerate the toxicity, not tolerate the poison. We have to cleanse the system. And even if you take the lessons of the human body, the antibodies that attack germs and attack disease, there are people in our society that act like germs, that act like diseases, and they've got to be taken care of. And it seems to me like the question keeps coming up: is there a conflict between individual rights and group rights? And there's a few things that I'm going to be reading here. I'm actually, because this topic is so difficult, really, from the framework that I would normally reach. I'm going to be reading a few little lines out of the Neotech Advantages to kind of spark discussion, if you will. It says, the individual, a minority of one, is the smallest, the most important, most unprotected of all minorities, despite that the United States is founded on the principle of individual rights. We're losing those rights. The pendulum is swinging the other direction. But here's the point. If rights of the individual are fully protected, then all rights are fully protected for everybody. For blacks, Chicanos, women, factory owners, factory workers, farmers, homosexuals, you name it. Minority rights. It's a non-existent issue if the if the rights of the individual are recognized and honored. And there's something even more important, which is that, do I want people to recognize me as part of a minority, part of a group? Or do I want people to recognize me as myself, who I am? And the answer for me is, I don't want to be grouped in, I don't want to be considered as part of a group. I want to be just recognized for myself, for who I am as an individual. I don't want to be thought of as just one of them. Is that wrong? Or do you feel that way too? So let's talk about a few things here and let's see if this is true. Are we being forced to make a stand? And what side are we going to be on? Do you believe that the uncontrolled free individual is by nature bad and harmful to conscious life? Or as the Apostles' Creed says, that human beings are by nature sinful and unclean? Do you believe that? Do you believe that morally the individual must be controlled by external authorities, or they'll do bad things? That there needs to be an oversight? You know what, I'll tell you what I believe. I believe that this world requires discipline. And that discipline can either be an internal discipline, a self-discipline, or it'll be externally applied discipline. But I believe, and I believe very strongly, as somebody who is self-disciplined, I don't acknowledge the right of somebody else to discipline me. I choose an inner authority that is superior over any external authority. And I choose to be self-disciplined so that I don't need somebody, an external authority, telling me what I can and can't do. That's just what I come to that. And this list of things is probably going to kind of rile some people up, maybe a little bit. Do you believe that a group of people or government force is necessary to control the individual to make him do good? Now, a lot of these are, it's slippery stuff. These are slippery. I remember my dad asking me, he says, why do you stop at stop signs? Are you afraid of getting in an accident? Or are you afraid of getting a ticket? And I told him, you know what? Neither one of those is true. And that can be because these are all kind of trick questions, kind of in the same way. I said, neither one of those is true. I stop at stop signs because we have a collective agreement. And that collective agreement is that that's the way it's going to work for the best. And there's a big difference between a collective agreement and coercion or forcing somebody to do things. And I think that a lot of these statements or questions avoid that. They avoid the possibility of collective agreement because collective agreement is not external authority. It's collective agreement. It's not following a hive mind. And I think that the whole issue of this internal authority versus external authority versus the hive mind versus the collective versus the individual, we've got to start thinking of collective agreement because that is supposed to be what laws are. Collective agreements that everybody buys into and believes is good. Is the conscious individual subordinate to society or to higher or noble causes? Do we have to submit? Do we have to pay taxes? Do we have to have passports? It goes on and on and on like that. It's how much of this is a collective agreement and how much is just simply being forced on us is unclear. So I'm beginning to think this whole issue, this whole advantage is not going to be clear cut. Because they're bringing up a lot of kind of mucky stuff here. The use of force to compel individuals to comply with the will of society is a moral thing to do. Let's face it, in this world, you're always going to find people who, for every person that's for an idea, you're going to find somebody who thinks it's a bad idea. That's just the way it is. And to me, it seems like the best way of doing it is if I believe in a certain goal, I should just try to go for the goal and forget the conflict, forget being drawn into a conflict with somebody. Just head for the goal. And because that goal is, my inner compass would be showing me that goal. My inner compass, as far as I know, is not going to be saying, hey, you got to fight for this. It might say you got to stand up. Well, it might tell me, hey, you got to stop and fight for this. You get, who knows, I guess. I'm just about going to give up on some of these things because I think they're trying to, it's sophistry, and things are a lot more simple than what they're trying to say. Here's another one. Do you believe the moral purpose of life is self-sacrifice in serving higher goals? Do you need to give up your dream for something else? I honestly believe a win-win situation is possible. And if you are locked in a situation where there does not seem to be a solution, where there does not seem to be a win-win situation, you're not looking at it from a high enough perspective. You're looking at it from too narrow of a position. But that's just where I'm coming from, and that is coming from believing that all inputs are valid, that humanity, that each individual is trying to get through life the best way that they know how. And based on their belief system, based on their environment, based on their experience in life. And some of them are really missing the boat, but they don't know any better. And if you can teach people, if you can challenge people, if you can give people antidotes to some of the bad thinking, well, they'll choose what feels best. And that's what these advantages are trying to do. They're trying to bring up concepts that challenge some of the toxic feelings and ideas that we have been infected with within this society. This idea of sacrifice is a virtue and morally right. Sacrifice, sacrifice. Again, somebody's got to stay behind. Should it be you? I remember when I was a kid, I grew up in poverty, but I remember we went to some friends of my parents, and they had kids about our age, but they had comic books, and they brought out this box of comics. And I could never have comics because I never had enough money to buy comics or anything. My parents didn't really believe in that anyway. But it was like a treasure. It was like a box of treasure. And I went through those, and there was these ones I really, really, really wanted to read so badly. And then there was these other ones that were just kind of like not as special. And I started reading the ones that were not as special because I wanted to save the ones that were so special. Not realizing that I'd never get to them because we were only going to be there for a few hours. And that's kind of the way that I went through life. Was all the good things, I said, no, I'm going to save those for later, and I never get around to them. So it was a mindset. Was anybody making me do it? No, they weren't making me do it, but I was raised in a way that was how I thought, and it was wrong. When I think back now, and I think I should have just went for the ones that I really wanted to read. If I only had 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours to read them, I should have read the ones that I really wanted to. Instead of that sacrifice, self-sacrifice type of thing, where you always hold back. Always hold back. You know, if you want to, the truth is, if you want to achieve your dream, if you want to reach your dream, you got to reach for it. Damn. You got to reach for it. And I was trained not to reach for it. It took me my whole life. And I'm still struggling with that, to not reach for it. So is it right to deny yourself? Is it right to kill off that dream because of some other things? Or should you reach for the dream? I'm just bringing some stuff out for thought. Altruism is a prime good. Altruism, you know, I've worked in social work. I've been a family crisis counselor and I've been a children's mental health social worker. And I've been a driver's ed instructor. And you know which one I like best? I like the driver's ed instructor job. Why? Because I was working with teenagers and we were trying to get we were on the same page. They wanted to learn how to drive and I could teach them how to drive. The whole family crisis thing, the whole children's mental health thing, I got burned out. And one of the discouraging things was you can get a family through a crisis and things just go back to the way they were over and over again. It's a waste of time. If they don't want to change, they're not going to change. And we think of altruism, we think of doing all these good things for people, but it boils down to, in my mind, this is what I believe, that saying, you give a person a fish and they eat for a day. You teach them how to fish and they're set for life. And our society is giving people a fish, but it's not teaching them how to fish. It's trying to teach them the opposite. Be dependent on this, be dependent on this, be dependent on this. No. You teach them how to fish, and they're set for life. Our society is not doing that, and what they're doing is they're trying to twist things up by these kind of mind-warping questions that evade the whole issue. Pride is a character flaw. Pride. Pride is evil. Oh, but you know what? The bottom line, if you really did something, if you really achieved something, if you really attained to something, it's not bragging because you did it. If you did it, you did it. But we are taught to belittle ourselves. Why? Why should we, if there's something that we've attained, something that we've achieved, why should we be ashamed of it? Why should we belittle it? If we've actually done it, we should be proud of it. And is being proud of something that we've achieved or done, is that pride? Not necessarily. Again, you're getting into using words in toxic ways or mind-bending ways that I don't like this whole thing here. Duty to authority is everyone's obligation. Authority, duty to inner authority, duty to the still small voice of conscience, duty to that divine spark that's in every person's heart. That is the ultimate authority. Even the Bible, if you want to get into the Bible, it says, "Thou shalt have no other God before me." And that God is going to be speaking through that divine spark. It's going to be speaking through the still small voice of conscience. It's not going to be speaking through some external authority out there. Again, I really don't like the way that these are phrased. Service to a government by conscription is necessary and proper. You know, I went over to Germany, West Germany, in 1980, and they had a program which said that after high school or whatever it was, basically it was high school, uh, everybody had to serve government service of some kind for 2 years. And after that 2 years of government service, they had, I believe it was 2 years of college paid for, or 2 years of higher training that was paid for. And I remember thinking, that's pretty good. I like that idea. Because you can make it in, you can have that as kind of a collective agreement that civil service is an important part of a government, but conscription is where you're being drafted to fight a war. Two totally different things here. Two totally different ways of getting at it. Property belongs to society, to the people, or to the government, or to the banks. Property. Is there no such thing as individual property anymore? Fewer and fewer people are able to own their own homes. I've never been able to own my own home. I've always had to rent. I'm just going to leave that one. Social science is a valid, valuable science. Social science. Well, social science would be a lot more valid if it included more of the spiritual, more of the metaphysical needs that people have. It's a start. It's a start, but it can go a long further. Populations consist of various groups of people, societies, and cultures. Now here, this whole group of things they're bringing up, or things you're supposed to kind of disagree with or whatever, but I'm kind of thinking that our cultures, our societies, it's a melting pot of all kinds of people, and that's the way it should be. So I don't know. Here's some this. This is getting a little long or whatever, but here's some that, according to like the neotech thing, we're supposed to agree with because we're supposed to think these are good. The uncontrolled free individual is by nature good and beneficial as a contributor to conscious life. They will produce values and things. It's a good thing to have people around. Morally, the individual must be free and remain free from external authorities. Again, I go back to the same thing. Life requires discipline. The best choice is self-discipline. And if a person has self-discipline, they don't need that external authority. If they have no self-discipline, that discipline is going to have to come from an external authority. You don't have a black and white here. I don't buy that. Both the individual and society function best when the individual is free from any group control, government force, or external authority. Again, it's the same thing. Does that individual have the self-discipline? Or are they running amok? Life requires discipline. Self-discipline is the best choice. Externally applied discipline, the last choice. Both the individual and society function best when the individual is free from any group control, government force, or external authority. Again, yeah, I see where they're going with these. I'm not even going to finish them. They're trying to get you to say that the individual and society function best when the individual is free from any discipline, basically. Self-discipline. This whole advantage could be summarized. So I'm going to forget all those other things. I'm just going to say this whole thing could be summarized by whether you believe in self-discipline or you believe it's got to be externally applied. We'll leave it at that. I'm going to say that I believe self-discipline is the way to go, the only way to go, and submission to an inner authority. We'll see you on the next one.